Welcome to Babblecom 5. So, when I first started my Babblecom 5 playlist on YouTube, I never for one moment imagined that I would be sitting here talking to you about this. Because as far as I was aware, and I think as far as anyone else knew at the time, Babylon 5 was dead. It was deceased. It has ceased to be. Because it wasn't even on the Warner's website as a Warner's intellectual property anymore. So, it had always been a bit of a mystery as to why they were so seemingly anti it, despite all the box sets and all the continuing popularity of the show. It had basically fallen into the proverbial black hole. And in the course of my rewatching the series, largely for therapy on my part, I suppose, it came to pass that Babylon 5 suddenly popped up in a remastered version. And I was then thinking, well, that's weird because no one's done anything with it. And all of a sudden, it's back on the Warner Brothers website and it's remastered, to some extent at least. So that did make me wonder. And the show's creator, Joe Michael Straczynski, has always been online. As he said recently, about 30 years he's been online now. He's always been there. And he rarely hints at stuff unless he's serious about it. And just recently he hinted that the show was going to come back in some way, shape or form. And you had to sort of, accept that was probably going to happen because he's wanted it to happen for a long time, but on his terms. And this morning I saw, I can't remember where I saw it first, it might have been Twitter, it might have been Facebook, but basically it was an announcement that Babylon 5 was going to get properly remade in some way, shape or form. Now, I don't know what a reboot means to you. It generally means the original version of the show, but reimagined for the modern audience. And from what I've read so far, I think that's what he's going to do. But I thought it would be nice to give you the words of the man himself, as I've just seen them on Facebook, so that you would have an idea of what he's planning to do. So, let me read this out to you. To answer all the questions, yes, it's true. Babylon 5 is now in active development as a series for the CW. We have some serious fans over at the network, and they're eager to see this show happen. I'm hip deep into writing the pilot now, and will be running the series upon pickup. The network understands the uniqueness of Babylon 5 and has given me a great deal of latitude with the storytelling. As noted in the announcement, this is a reboot from the ground up rather than a continuation for several reasons. Heraclitus wrote, "You cannot step in the same river twice, for the river has changed, and you have changed." In the years since Babylon 5, I've done a ton of other TV shows and movies, adding an equal number of tools to my toolbox, all of which I can bring to bear on the question, if I were creating Babylon 5 today for the first time, knowing that what I now know as a writer, what would it look like? How would it use all the storytelling tools and technological resources available in 2021 that were not on hand then? How can it be used to reflect the world in which we live and the questions we are asking and confronting every day? Fans regularly point out how prescient the show was and is of our current world. It would be fun to take a shot at looking further down the road. So we will not be retelling the same story in the same way because of what Heraclitus said about the river. There would be no fun and no surprises. Better to go the way of Westworld or Battlestar Galactica, where you take the original elements that are evergreens and put them in a blender with a ton of new, challenging ideas to create something both fresh and familiar. To those who have asked why we're not just doing a continuation, for a network series like this, it can't be done because over half our cast are still stubbornly on the other side of the rim. How do you continue the story of our original Londo without the original Veer, or Jakar? How do you tell Sheridan's story without Delenn, or the story of Babylon 5 without Franklin, Garibaldi, Zack? The original Babylon 5 was ridiculously innovative. the first to use CGI to create ships and characters, and among the very first to shoot widescreen with a vigorous 5.1 mix. Most of all, for the first time, Babylon 5 introduced viewers accustomed to episodic television to the concept of a 5-year arc, with a pre-planned beginning, middle, and end, creating a brand new paradigm for television storytelling that has subsequently become the norm. That tradition for innovation will continue in this new iteration, and I hope to create additional new forms of storytelling that will further push the television medium to the edge of what's possible. Let me conclude by just saying how supportive and enthusiastic everyone at the CW has been and is being with this project. They understand the unique position Babylon 5 occupies both in television and with its legions of fans, and are doing everything they can to ensure the maximum in creative freedom, a new story that will bring in new viewers while honouring all that has come before. So those are JMS's words, as I said, on the Facebook page. And I think there's a lot of fear in the Babylon 5 community. I think in part because of the network choice, which I wouldn't pretend to know anything about. I think CW does the sort of the Arrowverse shows, but for me, they're a sort of teenage superhero show. I haven't really massively followed any of them. So I know that they do Flash and Supergirl and all those sorts of guys if it's the network I'm thinking of, but I wouldn't care to judge the quality because I haven't seen enough of them on a long-term basis to do that. But people seem to be a little bit concerned about this. But obviously from what JMS has just written, he is confident that they are going to give him the sort of scope that he needs to do what he wants to do with the show in this new generation. And it was prescient of me because I actually sent him a tweet recently, but they basically said, how on earth would you do the show now? Because looking back, each season had 21 episodes and they were 45 minutes long, give or take. And of course now the seasons that I've seen of modern sci-fi shows tend to be much, much shorter than that. Nowhere near the 20-odd episodes that Star Trek Next Generation and Babylon 5 used to get. So how then do you do that sort of epic scale of storytelling with far fewer episodes? I mean, I guess the short answer is you cut out the chaff. But the problem is in Babylon 5, even the chaff had a lot of content to it and a lot of universe building to it. But that is the great advantage of it, and it always was, is that you had this massive universe that he'd laid the foundations for that could go in all sorts of different directions, in however he wanted it to. And we had Crusade, we had Legend of the Rangers, we had the Lost Tales. So we've had stories from this setting that went beyond just Babylon 5. And Babylon 5 itself, whilst it was the pivotal storytelling place, it wasn't the be-all and end-all. It wasn't the stop and the start of the show. The show went well beyond it. Went to alien planets quite happily. It was not stuck on the station. So there's no reason why a new show has to be stuck on the station at all. It may be that Babylon 5 is more of a waypoint and a sort of a touchstone for this one. I don't know. And he doesn't take story ideas. You've got to be very careful what you aim at him online. So I'm not even going to speculate about where he might go. I doubt you'll ever see this. So it doesn't really matter. But there are lots of ways he could go. Apparently, Sheridan has been slated to still be involved with it, which is a sort of an action type that would make sense, I guess. I think there are lots of things that people in the fandom would like to see. I honestly don't know if they'll actually get them, obviously, but Babylon 5 did not have much of a budget originally at all compared with the only comparable show at the time, I suppose, The Next Generation. I think it had about 2/3 of Next Gen's budget, and it was using CGI in a very experimental way, and it was really pushing the boundaries of what could be achieved. So you give JMS a budget, and sky's the limit. And in fact, probably the sky probably isn't the limit. It probably goes well beyond that. But it's an exciting concept for him to have that much control. but I'm really hoping that he paces himself, because the man lost a lot of weight doing Babylon 5, and he wrote a lot of the episodes almost continuously when you got into later seasons, and I think it did take a lot out of him. So I'm hoping that he's going to have enough of an established crew around him that he can sort of delegate some of that in a way that he feels comfortable with, obviously, because the critical thing about this is that it is JMS. It's very much, his show, his concept, his idea, and the characters have always been bouncing around in his head by his own admission. He still has conversations with them. So had it been anyone but him trying to do this, I think the fandom would be screaming right now. As it is, they're screaming, but probably for more positive reasons, I think, because, I don't know how many people really saw this coming, because as I say, it's just been dead. There's no books, there's no toys, there's no, there's just nothing. There's certainly been no sign of any Blu-ray releases or anything like that, which obviously most shows of this ilk have had in the recent past. So, we may well now see things like that. I would be amazed if we didn't get a reissue of these, these box sets now. We're bound to have that. I mean, the effects and the ratios and stuff were always an issue with them, but there's probably no reason, given enough money, that you couldn't throw enough at the effects to completely redo them, to some extent at least. I don't know. It's not my area of expertise, but as they say in the show, faith manages, and it seems to have managed again. Because, touch wood, all being well, we will see new Babylon 5 content for the first time in, 2 decades, possibly? Which is remarkable. But I just hope I think clearly what JMS wants to do is test himself, I think, and sort of take it beyond what the original show was, because he was limited there. But even then, he was online feeding stuff into it, and there was a little bit of a website for it, but then obviously, as is often the way with these things, the fans then took over the online presence because they were better at it in those days in some respects, especially if you have zero budget to do it yourself, of course. So it wasn't the news I was expecting to wake up to. Last night I was moving furniture around, so I didn't see it starting to unfold, and I've got to go and move some more furniture around now. But I didn't want to leave it unregistered on this playlist because it is a big deal. Those who know me online said to me, predicted that I would react in this fashion, and they were spot on, of course, because it's very much it was a sort of quite a formative show for me, because I always felt it was more realistic than Star Trek in terms of the way it approached humanity, but at the same time it had its own ups and downs. It wasn't all negative at all, but it was realistic about the fact that we do have peaks and troughs in life, and it was, its writing was reflective of that. And what I've always smiled at after the event is the fact that a lot of JMS's writing was involved in my childhood, whether I realised it at the time or not, and obviously I didn't at the time. But Jason the Wheeled Warriors, the Real Ghostbusters, all sorts of stuff he had a hand in writing, and all of those sort of cartoons are shows that I've always had an affinity for. So I sort of smiled right to myself the first time I found that out, because I thought, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because somehow he just has this ability to tune into people, that what he does, he just makes such believable characters, and they're often flawed. And I think that's the critical thing. They're often flawed, and we're all flawed, one way or another. And so those characters resonate for us because we see elements of ourselves in them, but we also see what we would like to be in them as well, I think, a lot of the time. So, there will always be some people who will just hate it because it's new. That's inevitable. I might hate it because it's new. I don't know. I do find some modern shows are just sort of being fast, and the thing is, I'm 20 years older than I was when I first saw it, so my tastes have changed. JMS's tastes have changed, so JMS may well approach this in a very different fashion, and it'll be fascinating to see what he does do with it, because he's obviously going to choose to modernize it in some way, shape, or form that he hasn't been entirely clear on, and perhaps that's going to shift over time as well. But the fact that he's actually put pen to paper and he's writing it or typing it, obviously, is a really positive thing, because it means at least we'll get the chance to see what the show might have looked like were it created now, today. And also we can look back fondly on the original, those of us who are used to that, and we'll see where we land.